One of the things that I wanted to ask that I hope has not yet been addressed was how you identify for purposes of purchasing lands through LWCF funds to address the public access issue. I mentioned in my comments again that in Alaska and many remote parts, I think you, Senator Daines, mentioned that there are parts of Montana, parts of Alaska, parts of the country that it's really difficult to access these public lands, whether it's for hunting, fishing, recreational opportunities. What do you do, Mr. Connor, in terms of identifying and how are our sportsmen and women incorporated into a process of prioritization? As you've heard, Senator Heinrich and I are working on this bipartisan sportsman's bill. We've got some, what we figure are some pretty good provisions within that, but we want to make sure that the interests, the voices of the users of our public lands are heard as well when you are identifying priorities.
Absolutely. Well, we do rely on the local land managers working with the local communities on identifying those high priority access issues. And through that effort, we have gradually increased what is essentially a set aside within our programs to ensure access. And I think in the 2016 budget across Interior and USDA, it's a $20 million set aside out of the overall request. I would say also we're sensitive with respect to, so there's the specific set aside for specific recreational access, sportsmen, men and sportswomen, for hunting, fishing, those type of activities. There's also, I think, overall, we've looked at our acquisitions, and about 90% of the acquisitions do allow for public access to. There are some instances where we have conservation easements on private lands where private access is not, or public access is not part of the acquisition in that sense, and more that's for conservation efforts and to maintain the working nature of those lands. But we do try and ensure access to the overall program as well as the specific set aside.
Now, under the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, the NACA, the grant proposals there are reviewed, they're ranked by a conservation, the NACA council. And it is a 9-member board that is established by the Act, and then they make recommendations for funding for specific projects. Some have suggested that a similar process, I guess, for sportsmen to weigh in and to provide input for a prioritization. Is that something that the department would be favorable to?
We would certainly consider that and think that's worthy of discussion.
Okay. It is something that, again, I think as we think about our public lands and the issues relating to maintenance and backlog, the priority that we must absolutely place there, the second concern that I'm hearing from folks that are utilizing our lands in Alaska is these are public spaces, but it sure doesn't feel public to us. It feels like it's only the land managers themselves that seem to have access to some of these places because, and particularly Alaska, the remoteness and just the access issues. And so it is something that I want us to look critically at and again, incorporate the views of those who will be using these spaces.